All right, welcome to Musings from Arledge on wearesc.com. I have with me a special guest. I'm very excited about this. I have with me Mark Carrier, Trojan legend, two-time All-American, Thorpe Award winner, number 6 overall draft pick in the 1990 NFL Draft, Defensive Rookie of the Year, led the NFL with 10 interceptions, which is still a Bears record, a 3-time Pro Bowler. And if you care enough about USC football to be watching this show, you probably didn't need to hear any of that because you already know who Mark is. Mark, welcome to the program. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
So one of the things that excited me about having you on here, I had Sammy Knight on the show about a month or so ago, another great USC safety.
Yeah, I played with his brother Ryan at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it occurred to me that USC was, at least in the old days, before we started throwing the ball a lot, was known as tailback U. But I think you can make an argument that USC should actually be safety U. I'm going to read some names here.
Okay.
In addition to you, obviously a Thorpe Award winner and a 2-time All-American. And this is just guys over the last, say, 40 years. I didn't even go back farther than that. Dennis Smith, Tim McDonald, Joey Browner, your teammate Cleveland Coulter.
Yeah.
Dennis Thurman, T.J. McDonald, Tim's son, Darnell Bean, Seau Cravens, Taylor Mays, Sammy Knight, Troy Polamalu, and probably the greatest safety to ever play the game, Ronnie Lott. That is quite a legacy right there.
That's a special group. I've had the pleasure, I think, majority of them I've had relationship with or know. I think Dennis Smith should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't understand how he's not. Dennis Thurman doesn't get enough credit, how great he was. I've learned under him. Tim McDonald got me to USC. I mean, and I was fortunate. I was just in LA last weekend, got to be around the great Ronnie Lott, who, like you said, is probably the godfather of us all. I think just some of those names, and Joey Browner again, another guy doesn't get enough recognition how great he was. So I've had a good pleasure. I think Tim McDonald another guy should be in an NFL Hall of Fame. All those guys, and Troy obviously speaks for himself. Just great guys, great players, especially some of the young guys like Coach Taylor Mays. And I was with the Bengals. Played with, like Sammy Knight, played with his brother Ryan, TJ. I know, obviously, you know Tim, you know TJ. I mean, all those guys, great players.
Yeah. So let's talk for a second about what it takes to make a great safety. What do you have to have if you're looking to recruit the next great safety to USC? And you've obviously done some recruiting at the high school level. What are you looking for?
Wow, great question. I mean, I think you have to look. The game has changed. I mean, obviously, you read off a lot of those great names that from the 70s into the current, to 2000. So you always have to take into fact where's the game at. Like you look at the guys that I played before me, those shoulder pads are huge, mine's included. And then when you go to this day and age of these guys, those shoulder pads are a little smaller and also you're playing, you got to play the whole field. You got to cover, you got to, do a little bit. So, but just from some standard things I like to, one is intelligence, awareness. Things like, and I'm not saying you got to be a perfect ACT guy, 36 or something like that, but just have some football awareness of what's going on, understanding, vision. Got to have, got to see the whole field, got to project out. Athletic, got to be courageous because you're going to have to make some tackles. Got to have a short memory. That's kind of on a corner. I know that's a little bit of cornerback safety, same thing. Just ability to you got to have good hands, good. A lot of people say, Mark, you played DB because you were told you couldn't catch. But I think you got to have some ball skills and things like that. Quickness, like I said, instincts, things, just awareness, range, be able to, like I was fortunate enough to coach Ed Reed for 4 years and one of the greatest players. And you look at Ed, and Ed was pigeon-toed and walk around. But one thing Ed had was great range and this anticipation. He can cover a lot of ground, man. He wasn't necessarily the fastest guy. He wasn't slow, but he played twice as fast as he looked on the field because he was able to go jump and get balls and everything. So just a lot of different things. So those characteristics when I coached, look for in guys.
Yeah, I called Ronnie Lott the greatest to ever play, and I'm going to stand by that. But the people who argue otherwise will usually argue Ed Reed. I mean, that's you're talking about a guy who was extraordinary. Talk about ball skills and return skills.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you this, because it seems to me that the game has changed quite a bit since your day, since Ronnie's day, frankly, since Taylor Mays' day. I don't know that the way Taylor played at USC, I don't know that he ever would have finished a game at USC, right? I mean, he was the classic enforcer. I'm going to punish people across the middle, and that has sort of been taken out of the game a little bit.
Correct. Yeah.
And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it has, and then for some good reasons, I can understand that for safety. I'm not going to sit here and deny that why some of it was done. I think it's a little too punitive in some ways that they punish these kids too quickly after hits without really figuring out, okay, let's see what type of hit this was. Was it clean? Was it on time? Was it, you just see a big blown hit and the flag is in the kid's out of the game. I mean, I think it's too punitive right now a little bit. I can respect it. Having a son who played at one point, you want to make sure safety. You want to prolong kids' career. I respect that too. I just think that they try to regulate it too quickly instead of really understanding the punishment. Does the punishment fit the crime? Things like that. I think they're trying to come back to a little bit, being a little more subjective, and having video come into the play a little bit about it. I just think sometimes it's just too rough right away.
Yeah. Certainly makes it hard to play defense these days with the run pass option and the inability to light people up when they're not looking. I mean, it makes it, people score a ton of points these days, not only because the offenses are clever, but the rules make it hard.
Yeah, the rules. Yeah. And again, I understand, having my tenure within in the NFL, the scoring, that what brings the fans into the game. They want to, you look at Alabama, who's had, the last 10 years had the best program in college football, and they're giving up 30-some points a game now, So it's just the game has changed. You've got to cover the whole field. The ball's thrown. These quarterbacks are better prepared because of the spreads that everybody's running now prior to even once you get into high school, into college with these 707s now. But they want the points. The game, they want the points. They want to score points because that's what fans want. That's what keeps television. That's what people want to buy, promote. So they regularly, no one wants to see a 10-7 game. That's just not. You might get it, but it's not what they want. Not what the television people want.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, before we get off this topic of USC safeties, I'm going to ask you about a couple of guys in particular. Let's start with Troy Polamalu, who's everybody's one of everybody's favorites. What made Troy great? What made him special?
Well, Troy and Ed, you talk about, you mentioned Ed Reed. They kind of had a lot of the same characteristics. They're so instinctive and nose for the ball. People don't understand that Troy was he cut his teeth as a special teams guy first when he was at SC. He wasn't just this great safety. He started off on special teams, played and was very great, blocking kicks and running down on punts and stuff. Then he obviously matured into a really great safety who just knew where to go and knew how to find the ball and just cat-like quickness and just to be able to diagnose things on the fly and get there before the play even started or finished and be able to finish plays. And really doesn't get enough credit how good of an athlete he really is, meaning the various things he can do, run, jump, things like that, because he wasn't a highly recruited guy, but he made himself into obviously a great Hall of Fame player.
Yeah. All right. Another legend, Ronnie Lott. What made Ronnie special?
Gosh, and he was. Ronnie is special. I say Ronnie's one of the greatest football players in history. Not safety, yes, but one of the greatest football players ever, is just because he was able to control the game. He started off as a corner. He started in the NFL as a corner, then obviously moved to safety. But he was able to dictate the game from that position because even off other teams, other offenses, was always one to know where he was at. Now, obviously, he played on some great teams with the 49ers, but he was part of that reason. But his intelligence, again, he's a super smart guy, can dissect things, see things again before they happen. Just the way he carries himself was just, he made himself, he was just, everybody wanted to be around him. He made everybody around him better. He just was the tones. I mean, it's like, like a Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan for everybody else. When this guy walks in the room or walks on the field, you have to, it just resonated with everybody.
Yeah. All right. We're going to shake our fist at the college football gods right now. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right. Here's the question. I want you to tell me what you did better than Ronnie Lott. Is there anything in your game that was better than Ronnie's?
I think I was a better cover guy. I could say because I kind of came in towards the middle to end of my career. They were transitioning from those big safeties and beat them up and knock we had to cover more. Now Ronnie was like, "What are you talking about, Mark? I play corner," which he did. If I did something, I say I did better. I want to say I was a better cover guy. I can go cover the tight ends and even go out and cover the receivers.
Yeah. All right. I like it. And I like that you answered the question too. All right. Let me ask you this. I want to go back to these 1988, 1989 teams that you played on. I don't know if I mentioned, I was in high school at the time and I loved those teams. I lived and died with USC in those days. I have a theory. I'm going to ruffle some feathers and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but here's my theory. That in those years, USC suffered from maybe a little bit of the opposite of what they suffer from now, which is that they were stronger on one side of the ball than the other. And people are going to, and those USC teams were better defensively than offensively. And I know people are going to question that. They're going to say Rodney Peete, and I know Rodney Peete was spectacular. But here's the thing: you look at the defensive personnel on those teams. Cleveland Coulter, Junior Seau, Scott Ross, one of my all-time favorite Trojans. Tim Ryan, Dan Owens, Don Gibson. You're talking about an extraordinary group of talent, right? And in the games where those teams, both years, where they slipped up, which happened every once in a while, it was usually the offense slipping up. Now, you don't have to agree with me. I'll let you if you want to. I bring it up for a reason, because most Trojan fans right now are saying, okay, we know Lincoln Riley's teams are going to score a lot of points. And they are. I mean, of course they are this year with Caleb Williams, because Caleb Williams just by himself, 1 on 11, could probably score 17.
Yeah.
But just Lincoln Riley's history is his teams are going to score a bunch of points and they're going to win 10, 11, maybe even 12 games. They're going to do that. But a lot of USC fans are saying, but can he raise the defense's level to the point where they can beat a Georgia or an Alabama? And I guess we'll see. I'm curious about this. What is it about some programs where they can be great on one side of the ball, consistently great, but not always great on the other side of the ball? Sometimes you have programs that are, those old BYU teams from the 80s were amazing offensively. Didn't play much defense. You've had other programs that are fantastic defensively, not as good offensively. What is it? Is it a cultural thing? How does that happen?
I think part of it is just, you kind of alluded to it, is just the era. You have these spread offenses now, and it's all built around scoring, and it's scoring as much as possible, as fast as possible. And when you do that, that means you put your defense out there a lot more and quicker and faster, where it's hard to defend all that right now. For you to really to have a really effective defense in this day and age, your offense and defensive line, your defensive line, you better have the top 10 guys, 10 deep defensive alignment, because the way the spread works, the RPOs, it kind of slows you down a little bit, and you've got to go out and beat guys and beat them right away. But and with the running quarterback, you've got to play it a little bit more honest. It's not, you can't just run and get up the field, because now you create these vertical creases that allows the quarterback to step up in there and go. You got to be a little bit more push and not get behind the quarterback, stuff like that. But I think the way to help your defense, you got to be able to say, you know what, we're not going to score 50 points this game. We're going to make sure we keep that offense off the field. So that means they're going to run the ball, a little more ball control, not go for the big quick hit home run. We're going to try to take some time, eat up some of that clock, so we can make sure we keep our defense, keep their offense on the field, and keep our defense off field and fresh. I think with the way of the scoring, you have all these quick scores. Everybody scores super quick. You get defense back out there. If you're not playing to the strength of your team or to help to eliminate the offense. I mean, you look at the Super Bowl with Philadelphia and Kansas City. A big part of that game to me that happened was the fumble by Jalen Hurts right before halftime, because Philly's marching down the field to go up 21-7. We all can agree to that. Well, that fumbles happens. Kansas City picks up score. It's 14-14. Now, don't get me wrong, Philly marched down and kicks a field goal, but that touchdown changed, and then give Kansas City a hell of a lot of credit. They made the halftime adjustments. They came out and did their thing. But part of that is understanding, hey, that touchdown changed the whole atmosphere of the play calling, all this and that, because now instead of going down 2 touchdowns, you're down 3 points at halftime, and you make the adjustments and you go from there. And then you look at the end of the game, talking about the Super Bowl, when Kansas City's trying to run out the clock and score, the guy breaks loose. He could have easily scored a touchdown, but the presence of mind to understand, I don't need a touchdown. If I score a touchdown, they're going to go back on the field and they can keep this game going. He had the presence of mind to go down. They can run the clock out and win by a field goal. Well, they could have scored a touchdown and won by more points, but because of the understanding of the game and how to play, he went down early. They ran the clock, kicked the field goal, win with that. So it's understanding the game and how all sides work together, where if you just keep scoring quickly, that means you put the defense out there. They never can get rest. You're not playing with you're putting the clock. The clock is going. You're scoring within less than 3 minutes at a time. So the game gets prolonged, where if you got someone who understands, hey, we're going to score, but we're going to make sure we're not going to get chunks. We're going to work the clock, move the ball, run the ball, eat some of that clock. And I know I've gone a long way of talking about this, but that's what happens with these defenses this day and age, is everybody's about scoring and open offense and scoring as many points as possible. I mean, SC, their 3 losses, they scored over 40 points and lost 3 times. Think about that. Score 40 points and lose 3 games. Yeah. That's mind-boggling to me. Yeah. But that's just where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, and even Georgia, who the last 2 years, Georgia's had a standout defense, but Georgia gave up 41 points in that playoff semifinal to Ohio State. I mean,
yeah.
So I'm sort of with you. Here's my theory on this. It seems to me that in this day and age, if you're playing against a good offense, they're going to score. That's just going to happen. They're going to score. What you have to be able to do is you have to be able to make big plays defensively. You have to get sacks. You have to get turnovers. Because the reality is, if you have a Caleb Williams at quarterback, you get the ball, you drive down the field, you score a touchdown, you get a pick on that first series and score again. It's now 14-0, and the other team now has immense pressure on their offense, right? I mean, it only takes a couple of stops early. But you have to be able to rush the passer. You have to be able to get turnovers, and you have to be able to tackle in space, right? Because the offenses are so good at getting great athletes in space. But how do you teach tackling these days when we have these concerns about head injuries? We're trying to limit contact as much as possible for good reasons.
Yeah.
How do you teach good tackling in this day and age?
I've learned over the years being a coach at all levels, even in the pro level for 10 years. and having a different concept of tackling. You know, it used to be standard, put your head, make sure you see, obviously, and basic essential stuff, make sure you see what you're tackling, hold up. I've learned and done study, you tackle, everybody's like, you tackle with your arms. No, you wrap up and hold on with your arms. You tackle with your legs. I've understood. I always tell kids today, even though I don't coach, but I help. I always tell these young kids, hey, make sure you tackle with your legs. The legs are your strongest part of your body anyway. So if you don't lose your legs, if you lose your legs, your chances or percentage goes way down. If you stay on your feet, you got to always going to have a chance to make the tackle, and then hold on, and then get them on the ground. I tell guys, when I talk to especially defensive backs, and they're talking about coaching, talking about tackling now, I said, any coach that comes to tell you, on an open field tackle, make sure you get your head across, knock him down, run through him, all that crap. I tell them, you know what? They've never had to make that tackle in the open field with a guy running full speed at you.
Yeah.
My thing to them, and I always tell them, hey, get him on the ground. Okay, Mark, good. How do we do that? First thing, make sure you stay on your feet. Keep your feet, because you lose your feet, now your percentage of even making that tackle go way down. And then now you want to close that space, run through and grab, hold cloth, hold on. Oh, coach, what if I'm 200, he's 250. I said, hey, in the stat books, if he run, no, I don't care. Don't let anybody tell you differently. If you get him on the ground, whether he trucks you and runs you over and trips over you, that's a tackle. You did your job. You got him on the ground. You live another day. So don't worry about getting into all that, how it looks or not looks. The job is to get him on the ground, and here's how ways to do it. Here's how I advise doing it, because some guys tell you, well, take your shot. Well, yeah, you take your shot. You missed that shot. You just gave up a touchdown, because we're the last line of defense. That's what we got to always understand, guys. We're the last line of defense. We got to make sure somehow we stay alive and give ourselves a chance and get him on the ground. Trust me, you'll get more. And I tell kids, you'll get more crap or more yelling at you if you miss that tackle compared to how you got him on the ground. Just get him on the ground.
Yeah. You're 200, he's 250. Fine, let him drag your 200 pounds until some guys catch up and help you out.
And I tell kids too, and it's a good because I wasn't a big guy. I said, hey, his ankles and below his knees are not 200 pounds. You can wrap your arms around him, but you got to get there and get to him.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go through some of those 88, 89 games, primarily because I did this with Brad Leggett a couple of weeks ago when he was on the show. But I do have a question that I forgot to ask Brad, and I need to ask you. Junior Seau, 1989, goes completely insane and becomes a person that we all watched for 20 years in the NFL, right?
Yep.
In 1988, he doesn't play a ton. Nope. I'm trying to wrap my arms around that. You can make an argument that Junior Seau is the most talented football player in USC history. There are some other candidates, but you can make an argument, right?
Yeah, right.
Is that guy not on the field every defensive play in 88?
Well, you have to put it in context.
Yeah.
Junior initially was supposed to go to Colorado. Then all that big scandal broke out with Salanese and all that with McCarthy. So he doesn't sign on signing day.
Yeah.
He does, he's signed, he got him. So we were able to get in with him and say, hey, Junior, here. And not to, give his business out or anything like that in a negative way. But Junior, which is not existing anymore, Junior was a Prop 48 guy.
Right. So he had to sit out the first year.
Not only did he have to sit out, he couldn't practice. He couldn't practice all year. So think about that. Here you got one of the best athletes ever to come through USC. He can't practice spring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now we get to training camp. Now he's learning the defense.
Okay.
And he had Craig Hart, and luckily that 87 group from 87, 88, 9 group, majority of those guys all played together for at least 2 years, 3 years. So we had a really, really good close group.
Greg Hartcycle was a good football player.
Greg Hartcycle was a very good football player.
Yeah.
But what people understand is that Junior, he was around the team, but he wasn't part of the team at that time because the rules at that time wouldn't allow you to do that. So he wasn't able, he had to kind of learn the defense on his own. Well, you don't want to put a kid in that. And I give the USC Trojans, the coaching staff, Larry Smith and Chris Allen, and those guys, John Roten, all those guys, a lot of credit. They gave him a chance to be successful and not hurt his stuff, and not just put him out there and just say go crazy, because there's 10 other guys that you have to work with. So the reason why it was slow for him, and they trust me, and I agree, they could have put him in a lot earlier and we would have figured it out. But part of his growth was stunned a little bit because he couldn't practice with us until the summer. His freshman year. Now, the flip side of that, he got jacked up and was big and strong as anybody ever seen. Yeah. Because then you saw what happened the following year into '89, where he got to go through he got to go through spring ball with us, got to go and play into the summer, into the season, and then he exploded. But part of the reason why it took him a while to get on the field was because he was still learning how to play linebacker in our structure of defense, learning defense, understanding what's going on, where to fit, how to fit with everybody else. So it wasn't that he couldn't play. It was just the fact that he had to learn. He was put at an advantage because he couldn't practice and go through a spring ball with us his first year. So you're talking about a 18, 19-year-old kid.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it is now where you're always doing football all over. It had to take time for him to get comfortable with the settings. And then, like you say, when we came around at the 89 season, he got through spring ball, took off.
Yeah. Unblockable at that point. Have you ever played with somebody who was a more impressive physical specimen than Junior Seau?
Besides myself? No, not really. Not really. I mean,
I watched Mark. You were an amazing player, but I watched you play. I saw what you looked like. You didn't look like that guy.
No, I didn't look like not even close to that. No, that's why I tell my wife when I show these old pictures. Remember when I used to like that, honey, and she just doesn't comment. But you talk about he was from what people in Junior, obviously, and it was funny in the draft, NFL draft, that year, Junior went 5th and I went 6th. Yeah. And everybody said, "Why?" I had another year to play if I wanted to. Say, "Why didn't you go? Why didn't you come back?" I said, "Junior was leaving. Why did they?" But what people don't understand in that defense, Tim Ryan, who won the 3rd round, and Dan Owens, who won the 2nd round. I think Tim Ryan had 18 sacks. I think Dan O had around 18 sacks, and that Junior with about 19. I mean, between those three guys, we had over 40 sacks. Yeah. With those three guys. It wasn't just Junior. Junior was kind of like the icing on the cake that took us over the top in that regard. But don't get me wrong, Dan Owens and Tim Ryan were studs in there. That's why they got drafted.
And Don Gibson was a great football player too.
And Gibby, who ended up the year before, blew out his knee. Yeah. And Gene Fouché did a really, really nice job. But Gibby was the anchor. Gibby, he did the dirty work for all those guys to allow them to do what they did.
And then Scott Ross, in a day when teams were still running the ball off tackle and running ISO out of the eye, Scott Ross was an extraordinary inside linebacker.
I mean, Scott was a freshman. This kid was a freshman, and he got inserted into the lineup. And you know what? Like anything else, I've been there in other ways. The trust, when we figured out when he, and Cott took control even as a freshman. He took control of the huddle. He didn't back down, to succumb to these, all these guys. Like, hey, I'm a freshman, getting filled and overshadowed. He held his own. He did a nice job, and we needed Scott Ross to help us. We won 3 straight Pac-10s, and it was a big reason for our defense being as good. Those 88, 89 teams, our defense was top 3 ranked in the whole country, not in the Pac-10. No. In the country, we were in the top 5 defense every year of those last 2 years. Yeah. And Scott Ross was a big part of that.
All right, so I've got maybe an odd question for you, but it's something I've been wondering. Tom Brady's retiring this year, a year after it looked like he was going to retire. And it occurred to me that it must be extraordinarily difficult to walk away from the game when you've been at the very top, right? A great player at the highest level, and that's your whole identity. Since Tom Brady was probably a kid, that's who he was, Tom Brady, football player. So I'm curious, was that when it became time for you to hang up the shoulder pads and the helmet? You were a star in high school at Long Beach Poly, you were a star at USC, you were a Pro Bowler in the NFL. I assumed that was a huge part of your identity. I'm Mark Carrier, I'm a football player, and a damn good one. Was it difficult when it was time to walk away, and how did you make the adjustment?
It was difficult. It was difficult for a lot of it. There's many of obviously with mental illness being a big part of our society today, it's a lot of guys went through struggles doing it. And just like for me, it was tough because that void of being the best and being loved by everybody, and that pump, that feeling of competitiveness, and that void was gone. And how to fill it as being a regular day guy, and I was married, had my second kid. It took some adjustment. It took some time for me. I mean, I remember my wife told me one time she came home the first year I was out, and she was talking to me, and I didn't know she was talking to me. I was just staring. I was staring at the TV, really, but not watching the TV. And she's trying to talk to me. She finally came and touched me, and I was like, "What? Aren't you here? Aren't you listening?" And it was just one of those where he was like, "Are you okay?" And thank God I was, and I was able to get going and get. It's an adjustment. I think the biggest thing for me was I didn't want football to define me anymore. I didn't want that to be my identity. I didn't want just it's Mark Carrier, the football player, the professional athlete. I was dead set on making sure, as I got acclimated in the world with my kids and society, that's how they. I mean, even today, I walk around my house right quick and then show you, except for one or two things, there ain't much, and that's just me. Not saying it's wrong or right. I don't have much of football stuff, memorabilia in and around my. I don't know where my Thorpe Award. I think it's in my mom's in California. I don't know where my Thorpe Award is, and that's just me. It's just that I didn't want that to define me as a person, as a husband, as a father. I just wanted to be, a good person.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, two other quick topics for you. USC obviously is moving to the Big Ten here soon. When you were at SC, you guys played against Michigan State. You played against Michigan, 2 Rose Bowls. You played against Ohio State in regular season game.
Yep.
At least 1, maybe 2 regular season games. You played against Illinois. So you played against a bunch of these Big Ten teams. I'm curious, what's your perspective on this move? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What do you think?
I understand it. I mean, if I was living on the West Coast, I would hate it. No question. Like, why are we going up there to be part of that conference? That's the conference we played a beat all the time when they used to come down to Rose Bowl. I get it. But now that I'm living in the Chicago area, I got access to all these schools now. So I'm feeling pretty good that I'm 2 hours away from half the schools that the conference are going to they're going to play. I mean, I'm 2 hours from Wisconsin, 2 hours. I'm 15 minutes from Northwestern, 2 hours from Illinois, 2 hours from Purdue. I mean, Minnesota's 3-4 hours, so I understand, but I understand why they're doing it. It's about, the bottom line is about money. It's about the money. Follow the money. You always say why you do certain things, why people do. What does the money take? It's just like the NFL. Follow, when they were talking about in the NFL, when that game got canceled due to the kid having that heart attack, and they were talking about, well, they'll cut move the game, get the game played, and we will be 1 week into. We've done it before. Well, the powers that be, where the money people are saying, hey, no, we're not doing that. I got a lot of money invested in that opening week. We got to figure out something else. So, well, my point is, I understand why SC's doing it. I mean, what they're getting out of the Pac-12 from a financial standpoint compared to what they're getting the Big Ten, you're talking about $10 million difference of money. It's I mean, obviously competitive and all that. Yeah, that's all BS. It's about the money and the understanding, the foreshadowing, the understanding where the landscape, where the game's going. You don't want to be standing without a chair when these things. I mean, I'm thinking there's going to probably be 2 or 3, 4 at the most mega conferences, and you don't want to be the one standing on the outside looking in.
Yeah, no, you're right. Look, it's hard to compete with Alabama and Ohio State if they have $40, $50, $60 million more in the budget every year than you do.
Correct.
Now, the good news is, and I live in Dallas, so I'm flying to these games no matter where they are. But it does set up some great road trips. I mean, seeing USC play at the Big House or at Wisconsin, I've seen them play at the Horseshoe. Is fantastic. I mean, that's going to be Penn State for a whiteout game. That's going to be a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward. Yeah, and then the atmosphere in the Big Ten is obviously really, really good. I mean, obviously schools do a great job in supporting their teams, and like anything in society in the world, man, it's all about adjustment. You got to adjust to the times and where the game's going, and how to get your stake in this game, and make sure you're relevant. And this is now my only problem is we got to bring those cats west with us. But I understand
you got to bring the Bruins, yeah.
You're right, but that's basketball. That's why they're bringing them. Well, it's for basketball reasons. But that's my only argument. Like, why we got to bring those? I can't say it with us, but I get it. That's the basketball side of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you got the better of those guys when you were around.
That's right. That's my only argument with Aikman. I always tell Aikman, I'm 2-0 against you. Then he like flashes those NFL Super Bowl rings in my face.
Yeah. Well,
walks away. Yeah, okay.
We're talking college now. And you got a big pick against him in '87 in the second half. I remember.
2. I got 2 against him. I got 2 and a sack. My only sack in college was against Troy Aikman.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I got a sack and 2 interceptions in that game.
Couldn't happen to a better guy.
It could happen. Trust me. I let him know it every chance I get when I see him.
All right, one more quick topic, then we'll let you go. I'm curious. You now have 30 plus years of perspective looking back on your time at USC. Some of the things that you got out of it are pretty obvious. I mean, you got drafted into the NFL. You got a trophy that you don't know where it is. I mean, you got that stuff's obvious. But I'm curious, now that you're a little bit older and you have a little bit more life experience, what is it that you take from your experience at USC that's really important to you that people may not know?
The one is the friendships, the people. Everybody always asks, would you go back to USC? And I always say, only if I have everybody who was there with me. Only if I can go back with would I love to play with Ronnie Lott or Dennis Thurman? Yeah, no, But the only way for me to work for me, how important SC my experience was, if I got to go back with everybody who was there when I was there, because they made the experience worthwhile and so much fun, and just to when I tell people I'm from USC, especially in the Midwest, just their facial and how they look tells me yes, that makes I know I'm special. The friendship, the history.
Yeah.
The knowing when I go back to Southern Cal, go back home to Long Beach, that everybody knows that you're from SC and that means something. Being from USC means something. It stands for something, and it says a lot. But for me, it's the people and experience. Just being around that crowd and that group and the fans at the Coliseum and how. And I get it. Everybody's like, "Oh, Mark, there's no tradition. There's no camaraderie or history." I said, you're saying that because you've never been part of that. If you go to SC and you've been around it, people who are there know why it's special and why we love it and why we can't wait to always get back there, because it's just a special place. And how I always make friends because I'm in Notre Dame country. The school I work at is a big Notre Dame people, and my brother-in-law is a Notre Dame guy, and I always joke with some of my coworkers, a Notre Dame person. I said, the difference between USC and Notre Dame people, I said, Notre Dame people don't like each other half the time. SC people, when they see one another, it's love. When they see Notre Dame, everybody's looking at it like, yeah, he's Notre Dame, whatever. And then maybe you might start up a conversation, but if they can't do anything for you, you don't care. You don't have nothing to care about. And I make that joke because Notre Dame people don't like each other half the time. I said, SC people, we just love to be because we're SC and we think we're special.
Well, I've met enough Notre Dame people. I can understand why that is. I mean, I know enough Domers.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Mark, I appreciate it. And, this October, USC in South Bend. So maybe I'll see you at Notre Dame this year. And I appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks a bunch.
Well, thank you for having me. Love to always say, any chance I get a chance to talk about my SC days or SC people, I'm always open for that.
Excellent.